After getting an entry-level camera for filmmaking and ending up with footage like this, it can be easy to start thinking you need to upgrade to a full-frame camera to get better low-light footage. But before you do, there's some other more important and less expensive things you can do that'll actually help you end up with way better low-light footage like this without actually upgrading your camera. Hey folks, Cam here, helping you to make good videos, and I'm going to show you how your camera probably isn't the reason why you're getting bad footage, especially in low light. So as we get into it, let me know down in the comments what type of camera you're using. What we have here is some low light footage of a Sony ZV-E10 with the 28 to 60mm f4 to 5.6 lens. And as you can see, the footage barely looks any better from what you might get out of a cell phone. The initial thought would be that this isn't a very good camera, but the issue here is actually the lens. This 28 to 60mm lens is a cheaper option, but with that comes cheap results. The variable f4 to 5.6 means that the lowest possible aperture of f4 is only available at 28mm, and as you zoom into 60mm, the lowest aperture raises to 5.6. Here are the cameras at 50mm and f5.6, which means you have to push the ISO all the way up to 10,000 in order to get the proper exposure in this low light setting with only a street lamp lighting me. Compare that to this shot of the same ZV-E10 camera with the Sony 50mm f1.2 lens. It's 4 times the price of the other lens, but that f1.2 is a very low aperture that gives a much more shallow depth of field and also lets in a lot more light, which allows you to only have to push the ISO to 400 to get the ssame exposure. This allows your footage to be way less noisy and look better overall. And when you compare that to using a full frame camera like the A7C, also at 50mm and set to f1.2 with 400 ISO, there really isn't a very noticeable difference in the video quality aside from a little more shallow depth of field and slightly less grain. Even though the lens costs nearly $2,000, spending that same amount on a full frame camera and ending up with bad footage because of the same bad lens would be pretty frustrating, when you could have just gotten a better lens that would have resulted in a lot better looking footage. Plus, there are other really good lens options that cost way less and will still give you a pretty low aperture. So let me know down in the comments what lens you're currently using on your camera. But what we haven't addressed yet is that a camera or lens being good in a low light setting doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to make your footage automatically look good in that same low light setting. When I started out, I quickly made the switch from a micro four thirds camera to a full frame camera because I was under the impression that good low light footage just meant that you wanted to have as little grain or noise in the frame as possible. And looking back at those shots, even though the 50mm f1.2 lens gave a less noisy image, it still doesn't actually look very good. But when we throw a good light into the mix, now we have a way cleaner image where the subject stands out from the background with even less noise because the ISO is now down to 200. The light is in a spot where it looks like it could still be coming from a street lamp, so it's still believable as opposed to just throwing a light right in front of me to make me stand out and look better in the shot. And now indoors, this could also be considered low light footage on the ZV-E10 because I'm once again being lit only by the overhead kitchen light that's requiring the ISO to be up to 3200 for the proper exposure on that 28 to 60mm lens set at 50mm and f5.6 on the aperture. But once again, switching to the 50mm f1.2 lens at f1.2 on the aperture allows the ISO to be lowered to 125 for a much less noisy image with a way shallower depth of field. You'll also notice that the more expensive prime 50mm lens gives a much sharper image than the cheap zoom, even though it's all the way at f1.2, which tends to be the softer part of lenses with these really wide apertures. And to compare with the A7C, again, there isn't a whole lot of difference in the quality of the shots when shooting with the cheaper or expensive lenses between the two cameras in this bad lighting setting, aside from maybe a little bit more sharpness and better color accuracy in the full frame A7C. And I've seen a lot of beginner videos look like this because the only thought is about getting enough light in the shot so that it's not noisy or grainy, as opposed to shaping the light in such a way that makes the shot actually look good. But when we take away the overhead kitchen lighting and set up a better light, the quality of the shots improves dramatically. Instead of everything being evenly lit with bad coloring, I'm able to control the light to get some aesthetic lighting for the face with a little spill on the pillar behind me so that it's not completely dark. And with being able to control the color of the light, I can also allow the background to look a lot warmer for a much much more pleasing overall look from a single light where the subject stands out from the background in both depth of field and lighting. And I could always add a hair light and some other strategically placed lights later on to make the shot look even better. And once again, when compared to the A7C at the same settings, the image looks very similar because setting up lighting to optimize your camera settings is what's really going to help you get the most out of your camera regardless of what kind of camera you're using. Investing in a $200 light can make all the difference in your videos and save you a lot of money instead of feeling like you need to spend a ton of money to upgrade to a better camera in order to get good footage. Both of these are the same camera and lens setup, but with the lighting changed to make for a better overall looking image. And just because it can go all the way to f1.2 doesn't necessarily mean you should use that, because you can always crank up the light to compensate for a higher aperture, but you do want to find a balance because all the way at f1.2 in the shot can be a bit distracting with how much and how intense the bokeh in the background is. So in order to get the best low light footage from your camera, I'd suggest first investing in some quality lights to help you be able to control the look of your shots, since good low light footage doesn't mean just not having a bunch of noise or grain in your footage. Then the next step is to invest in quality lenses for your camera, because that will enhance the shot even more by giving you clearer images as well as even more control over the depth of field and creativity of your shots. And when it comes to spending money on lenses, that is a much better investment starting out as opposed to spending a lot on a camera, because you're going to be upgrading cameras probably every few years with all the new technology that constantly keeps coming out. But a good lens will continue to last as long as you take care of it and can be used with every new camera you buy. Granted, you continue to buy the same brand that fits that lens mount. And I have a lot of videos on the channel for lens suggestions based on various camera brands and models, so be sure to check that out after this if you don't know what you should get. And once you have those quality lights and lenses and know how to use them well, then you can start looking into better cameras to help improve your shots more and give even more options and video features as you learn more about filmmaking. But learning how to make good looking shots with limited gear is really going to help you get creative and save a lot of money while you learn how big a difference things like framing and lighting make on your videos over just getting better camera gadgets. But I hope this video was helpful, and if it was, please help me out by hitting that like and leaving a comment down below. Subscribe if you're new and check out some more videos, because I have a lot on the channel, videos showing you techniques in framing, lighting, and other aspects to help improve your videos even more and make you become a better filmmaker. And with that, I'll see you soon.